Let's keep it simple and straight. I'll just give you the highlights. What is it that they buffed? What is it that they nerfed? And my overall opinion on the highlights, but the patch notes, you'll be able to see them on screen. You will also be able to see them on the patch notes, which there's a link in the video description. That being said, let's just quickly go through the PvP balance exclusive adjustments. They decrease the damage and animation of the sheeting vacuum effect of the swift slash skill. So yeah, that's a little bit of a nerf right there. Now the general balance adjustments, they buff the carrying sorcery swords. This was basically unusable. I'm still testing this bad boy out. It doesn't seem that it's going to outperform a regular sorcerer, but I think that with a proper build, it's more than definitely usable right now. Extended the throwing attack range for the following weapons: the Smith's Script Dagger and the Smith's Script Cirque. Anyways, what I think that they should be addressing in here, it's the tracking of the actual things, but that's just me. A huge one that should allow you to beat Gaius a little bit better is the change of the placement of the bosses on the refight against the Golden Hippopotamus and the Commander Gaius. What this helps you is that it allows you to prepare a little bit better before you actually get stumped immediately as you enter the boss fight. So you do have a little bit more time to prepare right there. Now, the highlights of the bug fixes, and I would also like to give you my opinion on the PvE balancing, because a lot of people likes to believe, or they are in the right, like, you can believe if you do so. I don't share this opinion. I do not agree that if a game is a PvE game, it doesn't need any kind of balancing. I do believe that it shouldn't be as aggressive, for example, as on PvP, but there's some things that should by all means be fixed when they do not work as they intend to be working. Like, for example, the perfume bottles. They got, to some extent, nerfed, but the only thing that they did is fix a bug which was causing for people to deal 30k damage against some things by taking advantage of an exploit, which was aiming them to the ground, make them explode in one single place, and that will allow you to deal that damage. That's not how the weapon is intended to work. Is it totally unusable right now? By all means, it's not. It's just a weapon, like the rest of the weapons that you have out there in the roster, that you can build properly, and because of that proper build, it can work as intended. It can deal decent damage. It's by all means not going to be meta, as many other meta weapons that we have in the game, but that's a different discussion. They did need that nerf, regardless of whether you think that the PvE needs balancing or not, because they just were not working as they were intended to work, which is why they are here on the box section of the patch notes, not on the balance section. The chicken leg, which is the Blood Fiend's arm, it was one of the highest status build-up of weapons in the entirety of the game, reaching at around 250 status build-up, provided that you do have enough arcane. That has been decreased. Now it's only going to have, like, if you have 80 arcane, it's going to have like 200 at the most. And I do think that this shouldn't be right here on the box. I do not think that that was a bug, or maybe it is. I mean, I'm not the developer. They are the ones that actually have to do the final word on that matter. But I don't think that this is also nerfed to the ground. It's just that this weapon was proccing bleeding instantly on one hit. Is it completely unusable? Of course not. It still has enough damage, and now you're going from 1 hit bleeding to 2 hit bleeding. Such a big change, right? It's still usable. It's just that it takes 1 more hit for you to proc bleeding, which I do think that that's to some extent balanced, and I do think that the weapon is still very much usable and very much powerful for that matter. Now the shields, the weapon shields, the shield weapons, they are also being tweaked, and I think that this is one of the weapons that actually did need some kind of tweaking. Let's talk about the thrusting shield weapon type. What they used to do is that you attack with the shield, and at the same time you have frames where you can block with the shields, and the frames are actually quite extensive. They are actually quite generous. What's the thing? This also needs some type of balancing as well. You can't have everything. The fact that they fixed it, it doesn't mean that the weapon is utterly trash now. It's just that it needs to have some concessions and some things that you can do, and there needs to be some things that you can't do. So for example, the overall idea of the thrusting shield is that you can attack while blocking at the same time. What should be the downside? That you're using the stamina for attack and you're also using the stamina for blocking. However, the balancing of this thing, it's a little bit tricky, because if you use too much stamina, it actually makes the weapon quite unusable. But the thing is that prior to the patch, it was the stamina hit that you get. The stamina hit, it's just uses the one that you're using to attack, and the one that you're using to actually block the attack that you're fighting against, it's basically null. It was, to some extent, it was present, but it was just like quite literally nothing. Meaning that you could spam the weapon without caring about your timings. I'm guessing I'm still crafting the build for this weapon. I was actually crafting it before the patch. Now that we have a patch, I need to toy around with this weapon a little bit more, so I should have more input about this once I post that build. Now this is something that I do not agree with From Software, because the overall idea of them claiming that the performance issues is related to the ray tracing, I don't think that's the case. We could all say that Elden Ring is a beautiful game. As a matter of fact, graphically speaking, it's one of my favorite games in the entirety of the world. Not because it has cool graphics, but because it actually does a nice thing with what it has, with the overall art style. This is one of the most pleasing games I have ever seen, because the art style, the art directors, I do not know what were they on when they were building the game, but it just looks beautiful. Every single place that you go, it looks beautiful. But you can tell that the textures are not best, that there are so many things out there that are not the best graphically speaking. If the game looks beautiful, it's because of the creativeness of the overall idea of the picture that you have in front of you. That said, I still get on a 4080 lower 30-ish kind of frame rates whenever I have ray tracing on. But it's just in certain types of areas, and as a matter of fact, it's just in a couple of areas. If I go to the overall base game or some different places of the DLC, I can still get a stable 60 FPS without using the 100% of the graphical quality. So I think that their approach in here, it's not the correct one. Ray tracing should still be something useful for high-end cards, and the game should still be stable on lower end cards. They just need to pinpoint what is it that it's causing those performance issues, which I stand by what I say. It's definitely not ray tracing. Ray tracing shouldn't be something that you could tell to players, oh, if you have ray tracing on, in some areas you're going to have lower 30-ish FPSs, so you actually have to take them up. They do have a little bit more of different ways to alleviate or fix that, as you can see right here. But I mean, I'm hoping that they are still working on the base performance of the game and fixing that stuttering that you have in those areas. Anyways, if you like the content, so like it, is super appreciated. And also, you that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, have a beautiful day, goodbye.